Assalamu alaikum and a very good day to everyone. Thanks for joining the Halal in Travel Mihas Summit, which is hosted by Crescent Rating in partnership with Mihas. I'm Fazal Bahadin, I lead Crescent Rating and Halal Trip. It is my pleasure to welcome all of you to this session today. Today I'll be moderating a discussion on reimagining travel in a post-pandemic environment. In the travel industry, we are now really focused on the reopening of travel. One of the areas that most stakeholders are concerned about is how traveler behavior will change post-COVID. For example, what type of activities and experiences will they be looking, at least in the short to medium term? We often hear that the industry needs to reimagine travel. What does that mean? How should destinations prepare for this phase of travel? How will this impact the Muslim travel market? To discuss all this and share their expertise, I have with me today two people who can really shed some light on these questions. I have with me Monica Sanchez, who is the tourism counselor at the Embassy of Spain in Singapore, and Dr. Nisha, founder of Elevated Consultancy and Training, and also the co-founder of World Women Tourism. Monica and Dr. Nisha, thanks for joining the session today.
Thank you, Fazal. So my pleasure to be here, and assalamu alaikum to everybody as well.
Thank you, Fazal.
Maybe we could start with a brief introduction of yourselves. Maybe Monica, we could start with you. If you could briefly talk about the work that you do. I mean, having just arrived in Singapore during COVID, actually.
Yes, yes. I am the director of the Spain Tourism Board, and I arrived in Singapore almost a year ago, in the middle of COVID. The Spain Tourism Board promotes Spain as a one-of-a-kind leisure and business destination in the markets of Southeast Asia, Australia, and New Zealand. What we do is we support the travel industry by providing market intelligence, networking opportunities, product updates, and training. We work in collaboration with the private sector and the autonomous regions in Spain. Also, in addition to activities targeted to travel trade professionals, we market to consumers through social media information, a customer-oriented website, videos, and online content. I have been in tourism for the last 30 years. My experience includes positions in New York, as well as director of Spain's tourism board, also in Argentina, in Miami, as well as coordinator of the LATAM area. If anybody needs more information about my background, degrees, master, and so on, they can go into my LinkedIn page.
Thanks, Monica. That's a lot of tourism experience there, actually. Dr. Nisha.
So I'm a tourism management consultant. So I provide destination marketing and management consultancy to DMOs, hospitality companies, tourism companies, to look at how they could have a global strategic roadmap and a plan, feasibility studies, and then implementation of these plans to ensure strong positioning in this rapidly changing environment. The other thing that I do is that I'm a spirited campaigner, I would say, of women's empowerment and gender diversity and equality. So I run I'm a co-founder of World Women Tourism. So we look at how we could enhance women's empowerment and socio-economic status through network intelligence, training, collaborations, and partnerships as well. And in addition, I'm an academic, so I lecture at some of the universities over here in the area of tourism, hospitality, and events.
That's great, Nisha. So with Nisha and Monica, I think we have enough tourism experience out there.
And yourself.
So I think I want to do, let's get started. So, I want to start off with, we keep hearing this term that destinations need to reimagine tourism as we open up post-pandemic. So I think the question is, what does that really mean when you say reimagine tourism? Maybe, let's try to see if we can unpack that term for our audience. Dr. Nisha, so if you can have a go at it, what does that reimagining tourism really mean for destinations and services?
Right. Okay, so when we talk about reimagine, maybe I would try to contextualize it to Singapore. Maybe that's easier when I do an explanation of it. So we have this new theme, right, in Singapore that's called Singapore Reimagines. And it's really about setting a new standard for travel in the new normal, right? So while we're having lots and lots of issues and challenges in our industry, it is about how we can be more COVID resilient in our tourism industry and how we can meet the evolving needs of the visitors to ensure that their experiences are safe but yet delightful and experiential. So we have looked at three dimensions in Singapore: reimagine safety, reimagine technology, reimagine city and nature. So when you're talking about reimagine safety, as we know, safety and security has always been in the DNA of Singapore, right? And Singapore's tourism industry, we now highlight that safety and security and trust as very important dimensions in today's travel of how we are trying to recover as well. So heightened and gold standards that we are coming up with to ensure that the travelers who come into Singapore will have a peace of mind and assurance. So we have got accreditations and certifications and auditing today in Singapore, and that's really, really rigorous to position Singapore as a choice destination in the perceptual map of a traveler, right? Whether a leisure or business traveler. So that's reimagining safety. And then when it comes to reimagining technology, technology right now in Singapore is at the heart of all our tourism efforts and strategies. So if I were to give you an example of us trying to reimagine the MICE industry, for instance, from the time they arrive into our zero contact airport to the time they come into our events where they use facial recognition, to the wristband, a dongle to look at safety mechanisms, to using holograms to bring in our speakers. So the whole experience today is very much to do with a digitalized MICE experience. So that's the second one. The third one is that we are trying to reimagine the city of Singapore and nature. So at the heart of this is sustainability, because research has shown that there are two key dimensions of the future travel behavior would be, or the current travel behavior would be, trust and safety. The other is sustainability. While COVID is a crisis, we all know that the next crisis that we are facing, or even it could be a current crisis too, the climate change crisis. So the discerning traveler is going to be focusing on sustainability when they arrive into even an urban destination like Singapore. So we are trying to bring in the nature-based concepts into Singapore. So we are really, truly now a garden city, where we're basically talking about a garden in the city, it's a city in the garden sort of a thing, So we are trying to bring in wellness, health, and sustainability into the concepts that we are now developing in Singapore. So 3 pillars that looks at the reimagining of travel.
Yeah, before I go back to Monica, just on follow-up question on that. I mean, does it? Yeah, so I understand these are all enablers to safety, especially safety and tech. My question is so that layman could understand. Does it mean also reimagining somebody's experience of a zoo experience? Is the experience itself has to be reimagined, or?
So when you're looking at reimagine, if we talk about the 3 things that I spoke about earlier, when you look at this dimension of safety, when we are assuring people from the time they arrive to the moment that they leave, that is already going to influence their experience, isn't it? Because every little thing that they do, they have to be mindful about safety protocols and mechanisms that we have here in Singapore. When you're talking about technology, that's totally going to digitalize. So at one time, you have speakers who are in there. Today, we are adopting this word called phygital, physical and digital, right? So whether the speakers are coming through in hologram and the whole idea of how we are looking at the 360 virtual broadcasting studios in Singapore, that also requires a reimagination of how a business traveler is going to experience a conference, right? So yes, I would say that the three things that I spoke about will certainly influence and shape a traveler's experience in Singapore.
Yeah. Okay, good. Let's come back to some of the other stuff later. Monica, your thoughts on this whole concept of needing to reimagine tourism, especially from a Spanish point of view? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with what Nisha has said, about the three pillars. But I think even if we are reimagining, I really would say that the reimagining did not start with COVID, but it has been accelerated and pushed forward as a consequence of it. I mean, at least, I think worldwide, but especially in Europe and in Spain. I think for years there has been already a push to conceive tourism in a different way. But the fast pace of tourism growth, and I would say also the media and the governments that were addicted to measurements by number of visitors, the hundreds of rankings that are out there, and other quantity but no quality measurements, they were in a race with no winner. So, for example, in 2019, saw a record in number of international tourist arrivals worldwide, but also saw a record of problems regarding over-tourism, concerns about climate change, displacement of local people from the most popular tourism cities. So I think the irony is that COVID-19 has produced the worst crisis ever seen in the industry, but at the same time has allowed administration and companies to pause, breathe, and realize that this was an opportunity to implement all those overdue adjustments that would allow tourism to contribute to the economy in a sustainable way and be key in the well-being of local residents, because at the end of the day, governments push tourism for the well-being of the residents. That's the idea behind tourism boards and so on. So in addition, also, COVID has accelerated the digitalization of the industry and has accelerated the change in the demand. So it's necessary to evolve and to adjust to them. Like Faisal, you were saying, is the experience going to change? I mean, everything is going to change. Like before, we would say, when you go through an airport, the airport needs to be invisible. Now it's more visible than ever, because when you go through an airport and nobody asks you anything, you say, there's no security. I have COVID concerns. They haven't taken my temperature. So, from the time you arrive to the airport, the experience completely has changed, So in this context, and going to Spain, as you asked me to, Faisal, Spain is working in its recovery plan. It's a plan that has been approved by the European Commission and with the financial support of the European Union. In fact, I think in the tourism industry, more or less, will invest 3,400 million euros. There are 4 pillars in the plan: the transition to a sustainable tourism model, the digital transformation of the destinations and the tourism sector, specific strategies for the islands, the Canary Island and the Balearic Island, because they have their own problems or characteristics, and both of them together in normal regular time have like 50% of all our tourism, and then specific interventions in tourism competitiveness. So those are the 4 pillars that I think they are very much hand in hand also with the one that Singapore is doing.
Singapore, yes.
More or less, they are on the same line.
No, that's. I think as you said, Monica, I think so many things which were sort of put on the back burner before, when we were more worried about numbers and quantity of travelers and all that, has now the destinations are forced to actually to relook at them, because the COVID situation. I mean, mass tourism is going to, if at all it comes back, it is going to take a while to come back. So destinations really have a real good time to relook at the sustainability and community initiatives, I think. So I want to come back to that later, actually. Before we get there, so I think we talked about, Nisha, we talked about on the reimagined tourism, what they mean for Singapore, and Monica talked about, how Spain is looking at it. Sustainability is a key element of that. We'll come back to that. But from from a, let's say, from a traveler's perspective, what are your thoughts on, what these visitors who are now eager to, I mean, there's this, pent up demand theory and all that is out there. So what will they be looking for apart from the safety and tech and all that, in terms of real experiences? What will they be looking for, as destinations? What should they sort of prepare for these new visitors who are coming into the destinations? Yeah.
Right. So, Fazal, one of the things that I find that the COVID has done is resurface some of our concerns that have been in travelers' mind, and it has presented new concerns to us. So I recognized a few things that is going to be in our pent-up demand and how we are going to be meeting. So our visitors are going to be very, very discerning about destinations where I think it is more about the journey, than the destination. Yeah, so that's it. So it's going to be about the journey. So what are they going to experience in that journey is going to be more important than the destination that they are going to be selecting, right? So of course, like earlier I said, how we position our destination is equally important. But let's look at a few things. I think one of the things that is going to be a demand among travelers is going to be wellness travel, right? Because we have suddenly become very aware and conscious about our wellness now in the COVID situation. So I give you a very interesting example. Like in Singapore, we had close to 600 deaths in flu, before the pandemic, right? And in the last 1.5 years, we had no death through flu, interesting information that we found, because people are wearing the mask and they are conscious about their health and what we eat and exercise and so forth. I'm speaking about particularly in Singapore. So wellness is going to be a priority when we start to travel, and we are talking about mental, physical, and social well-being here. So even research has started to show there was a reported growth in the last 1 year in people searching online for wellness destinations, So Singapore itself has recognized it, and we are now trying to position Singapore, and I think in the history of Singapore's tourism, this has never happened before, where we are positioning ourselves as a wellness destination in an urban environment, So that's one thing that is it's going to change. If you look at how New Zealand, for example, has initiated a Spotify album on meditative tracks to calm listeners, right? And they're presenting a Maori-style yoga session stream directly from one of their famous destinations in New Zealand. And that's really about place marketing, place branding, but also positioning wellness tourism in New Zealand. So you see this as a trend in many of the destinations already. So that's one thing. Secondly, as I always am a firm believer, I think United Nations again has been spot on to say that sustainability is going to be the new normal. So travelers are also going to be very discerning, whether they are leisure travelers or whether they are MICE travelers. They are going to look for inclusive practices. They are going to look at sustainability in destinations. They will probably be looking out for businesses that are supporting local communities, businesses owned by women, businesses which are supportive of disabilities, inclusive and accessibility sort of tourism. So that is where people are going to find that travel should have a greater meaning when they start to travel, and a reflection of their personal values. We see that a lot surfacing in the last 1 year. I also think that there's a very good opportunity where if we take a leaf from the past crisis, there might be a chance for dark tourism, where this has been tragic and there are lots of things to memorialize, as we have done in other crises. So you might see memorials of COVID-19 heroes, like what we are doing here in Singapore. We are actually giving recognition of our COVID heroes. So there might be museums, there could be places where we want to show our community facility and that we are doing right now at this moment in Singapore. So that could be another opportunity that I see. I also see that that there is going to be a very big market for digital nomads, workations. So the way that we are going to be living, working, and traveling is going to change. We see that in Singapore, where the whole workspace, the notion of workspace is changing. Many people are realizing we can work from home quite comfortably. So we can work from anywhere in the world already. So we are redesigning our heartlands here in Singapore. We are redesigning our living spaces in Singapore. So we are making the business districts smaller and places where we live bigger and more inclusive and accessible to amenities and so forth. So we are probably going to anticipate digital nomads who are going to be traveling and they're going to be working. So what they require in their hotel rooms or in the destination must be so conducive to their work. And that could be really prolonged travel patterns that we might see amongst working adults, especially. So these are my thoughts for the time being.
No, I think just on your last point, I think the lines will blur when it comes to your travel, in terms of why are you traveling. Is it just for leisure? Is it for business? Or is it you're working for, you're working for some other company somewhere else? Of course, I don't think the property industry will like it, because that will have an impact on your city properties and all that. We have ourselves got used to working from home now, and which we probably about 2 years ago, we never thought what we are doing now remotely was possible, right?
Yeah.
Monica, your thoughts, your experience, actually, not just thoughts, how are, what are the early people who are coming into Spain actually doing, Are they still going to the same sort of attractions or beaches or shopping, or what are they doing differently?
What are they doing different? To be honest, this is anybody's guess. What are they gonna do? Not because of the lack of information. I think we all get numbers of reports, surveys, studies with the trends for 2021, what the tourists want, the new tendencies, direct preferences. But I think if we have learned something in these almost 2 years of COVID, is that the situation is very fluid and changes in the blink of an eye. So, if some months ago we thought that maybe young people would be the first to travel, now we need to revisit this premise, with an eye on vaccination requirement. Like, Spain requires to be vaccinated if you're coming for certain countries. So this may be not a problem in Europe or in Spain or in Singapore, for example, as the total population vaccination rate is very high. But there is still a number of countries where the pace is much slower, and it will take a time for young people to receive the shot. So in any case, I think that there are some preferences and demands that keep showing up as a constant, and that we see also in Spain. And the first one, already mentioned, and it's a given, is the need for trust and confidence in the destination with all the health and sanitary measures in place. The flexibility to cancel or change bookings and reservations at any time. This is now a must, that nobody thinks any other way. When 2 years ago it was you couldn't cancel at last minute. We also see an increase in up market or luxury tourism, more custom-made trips, exclusive experience, additional services such as private transfers, private cars, and renting of vacation boats to enjoy the destination privately and within your own group. Regarding gastronomy, we see more private dinners, and also picking up as well a search for local products and flavors from the past. An important trend for destinations that we are seeing at least in Spain, according to a survey run by Ipsos and Mavian, is the search for single destinations and extension of the average stay in that destination. Once you decide to go internationally, you just go to a place, stay there, and relax your mind, studying as long as possible without having to cross borders again to go to another area. Which is normally in Europe, you move from a country to another. Now we are seeing single destination. And of course, all the demands related to technology and digitalization, contactless interaction in checking in and out, at payment time, technology to avoid lines and crowded attractions, etc. And also, travelers in Spain are also adding the search for open spaces and away from the crowded city centers. But we also find a group of travelers that will plan to go to major cities, such as, for example, Madrid and Barcelona in Spain, and they are confident in the safety of the destination, and they don't plan to change their mind about being there.
These are Monica. These are younger travelers or more older younger travelers who are confident in going to the big cities, or you see older travelers also doing that?
To Spain, I mean, younger travelers in general, more than elder travelers. But I think the one clear thing from all this is that we need more than ever data. Yes. And the ability to react fast to that data, because the profile of the traveler today is going to be different from the traveler in 3 or 4 months. But I think the common demand from all of them is clear information and transparency. I think this is what we can provide on our side.
Yeah, no, I think that's really. I think the data part is so key in that we were talking about understanding data, insights, intelligence for some time. I think now more than ever we want almost dynamic live data to react to scenarios. Before I go to another area, but something that when Monica said, it triggered me a thought, and I wanted to get both of your input on that one. What will be the role of travel agents in this new normal, at least in the beginning? Are they still going to play a role, or there are two camps to that? Some are saying, look, they will travel agencies were almost going extinct before, right? Because people were doing on their own and all that. And there is some thought that they can play an additional role now because people are looking for confidence, safety, and all that. So they probably are important now. Your thoughts, are they will they play a key role at least in the short to medium term, or we are going to see more individual travelers bypassing all the middlemen and these middle layer of organizations? Nisha, you're muted.
Yeah, Fazal. Okay, I was a travel agent, so I have seen how we have been disintermediated. We have outlived our role. Because we have not reinvented ourselves. So hundreds of travel companies have folded up. Even so, I think the COVID has just escalated the problems of a travel company and what they really need to do. Not that it never was existing before the COVID situation, right? So we have actually seen in the last 1 year, companies that have been around in Singapore for 50, 60 years have actually folded. All right. And I think there must be a great reset, If travel agents are really going to survive, they have to reinvent. And this is not, again, a new word. We have been using this for a long time. Otherwise, you will get disintermediated. So whether there is going to be a role for very specialized travel agents who become advisories, who become consultants, to travelers. So if they are able to assure travelers, they will take care, of their plans. They are very meticulous in their advice. They become like a companion to the travelers, and also in terms of designing experiential sort of trips, which a traveler by Googling may not be able to do it. Directly dealing with a hotel may not be able to do it. So again, it will go back to how a travel agent is going to redefine their role in the current situation, and whether they can take on the role as consultants and no more travel agents. So for
Monica,
me, I feel that,
Monica, your thoughts on travel intermediaries? But I think that's a key question people are asking. What happens to travel intermediaries,
Yeah, I completely agree with Nisha. I think travel agencies need to be consultants, and it's also going to depend first in the destination the traveler is going to. If if it's a familiar destination, you probably are not going to require travel agency. If you are traveling national, you are domestic, probably you are not going to use a travel agency. But it's also going to depend on your profile. Sometimes depending on the type of trip you want to do, you don't want to go through all the hassle and work that it requires. So it depends on the destination. It depends on your profile as consumer, what you want, and your job. You might have all the time in the world to prepare your trip, or you just want to say, I want this, give it to me already done, and I will take it, and that's it. And it's going to depend on the travel agency. I think we have been saying, travel agencies are going to disappear for a long time. I don't think they are. I think they are more needed than ever right now, because when you start traveling, the truth is right now, you go nuts. I mean, you go crazy with all the requirements. I have had to prepare trips for my kids, for my husband, and it's like each country asks for a different requirement, different shots. Each airline once requires one not. Where I am connecting, do they require PCR? Can I go from Spain to France? What do I need? So all those things, if you have a good travel agency, you have a professional that can give you all that information, and they are specialized, I think they are your best ally. So I think this is an opportunity for travel agencies, and I do not think they are going to disappear, but it's like always, the good ones are going to keep being there, and others are going to disappear.
Yeah. I think it's very interesting, Monica, you're saying it, because I'm going back on a flashback to 911. And I remember even at that time, that was the beginning of the disintermediation. And when the 911 struck, I had travelers who were actually booking directly online, and they didn't want our services. But the moment they were stuck in Hawaii, they were stuck in different parts of the world, because they had my telephone number, and they cannot forget my telephone number. The first person they reached out to was, Anisha, help. I said, look, I don't have your information because you didn't book through me, and that's the true moment of a crisis, when they realize who is your ally, who is your friend, who is your consultant, who can dive in to help you. And again, it was an educational process for me. I realized that when I was speaking to my client after that, I had to educate them. In the crisis, what are you going to do? When the whole system got wiped out during 911, there was no trace of a traveler on the database at all, and that's when we came in. So again, if a travel intermediary can understand this and how they are going to do their value proposition and educate the customer. And you're right, Monica, I think now more than ever, the role of a travel agent will become very important. Like, although I'm no longer a travel agent, my friends now are calling me to ask me, which country can I travel to? Which country requires PCR? So I am resurfacing as a travel agent, although I'm not one now, Yeah, that's right. Maybe I should charge them for it now. Yeah.
Thanks. No, I think that's a really valid point. I think about. I think they did it before COVID. Actually, they renamed the American Travel Agents Association to Travel Consultants Advisors or something. They changed the name actually. So I think we have about 6 or 7 minutes more. I want to touch upon the subject that we discussed: sustainability, community inclusiveness, wellness, and all inclusiveness. My biggest concern is that when it comes to sustainability, community, and all that, there are two parts of it, right? One, the services themselves, like hotels are doing waste management now better in some places. We know, they take care of the environment and things like that. So they do something on their own. But however, I think there is still a gap in getting your guest or your visitors involved in that process. I think it's the guests don't understand sophisticated terms as your contribution to carbon footprint is this or that. They need to understand. If I do this, I'm contributing to that. I think that destinations probably, in your opinion, are they really making it easier for travelers to sort of engage with the community or let's say contribute to protecting the environment? As we speak, it's becoming a huge issue. It's floods, it's fires everywhere. It's real. So what your thoughts on that one?
I think we have to look at the market segment, Fazal, because we cannot lump travelers as a homogeneous market segment. So when you talk about the Gen Zs and why is here different? It's the woke generation, right? So the millennials are very aware of it, and they are very discerning. They are seeking places which they have a very good understanding and knowledge about what is community sustainability, inclusive form of travel, and they also know what is their responsibilities. They read up a lot. So we don't really need to educate them, but we need to show them which organizations are practicing it, which destinations are already doing it, and of course, digital media, social media, and the way that you do place marketing, place branding, what I call mind share today is very important for that market, Then we have another group of travelers who you're absolutely right. They don't have an idea when we use the word sustainability or regenerative, They don't know what that is. And that's where I think we have to simplify that process, Many organizations do it without even telling the traveler that they are into sustainability. And to me, that's important, that you may do what you need to do, whether it's a CSR or whatsoever that you believe in, but it's a form of education process. It's our responsibility and accountability to also inform the traveler, we are doing this, and why we are doing it, and what is it that as a visitor you could do to contribute. So how do we translate it to layman terms? How do we make it more immersive, that a traveler, when they come in, they are also partaking in what we do to serve the community or to the environment, So this requires, I think, very clear understanding by organizations. For example, a hotel needs to know, how do we translate that, to day-to-day practices? And that's really what we call mindfulness, mindfulness. So how that interpretation happen to every single action that a traveler undertakes. So it's not accidental. I think you probably need to have a department or people in your organization who knows how to translate that within your own hotel or resort or destination to give a clear understanding, and then later position it as a form of your USP, right? So yeah.
Monica, your thoughts on how can facilities, services, destinations get more engagement from their visitors and guests in terms of contributing to this whole mindfulness travel?
Yeah, I think the problem is that sometimes we want to give too much information or do things very complicated. And as Nisha said, it has to be very simple. And simple sometimes is very hard to do. But simple is, for example, years ago when the hotels start placing in the rooms, for the sake of the environment, if you don't want your towels or your seats to be washed, every single day, don't put them in the bathtub. If you want them to be washed, put them in the bathtub. And this message, little by little, it goes into the people's mind. You were used to go to the hotel and every day there was clean towels. Now you say no, because I don't do this at home, shouldn't be doing it here. So 2 or 3 days is okay. So yes, a piece of a little sign saying, let's take care of the environment, achieved a lot. Now, also the hotel can give you, instead of plastic straw, can give you, bamboo straw or whatever in the thing. So it's a message that you get. I mean, it's very simple, but as soon as they give you your drink and that straw is not plastic, you realize, that hotel is working in sustainability. In Spain, you will see very few hotels anymore that have the toiletries with plastic, individual plastic. So that's another thing. So it's little things that they seem simple, but there's a lot of thought put behind. So when you are a customer, you realize, what is the commitment of that company, with the environment. And I think that's really good. Or not give you, there are hotels in Spain, when you arrive, they don't give you plastic bottles. They give you, a metallic bottle, so you can use it all the time along your stay, and then you take it with you. So little simple things, but it goes into the mind of the customer. So everybody, contributes also to that. So I think but as I say, simple is very hard sometimes to, it comes as simple, but it has a lot of thought behind.
Sure. Yes, thanks, both of you. I think we have only a couple of more minutes. I think we discussed quite a number of topics. Before I close, I just want to ask Dr. Nisha and Monica some, 30 seconds blurb on what destinations should really think of doing in as we open up for travel in the next 6 months to 8 months. Nisha, you first. What should be the primary focus? Yeah.
I think for me, I feel that destinations. This is not the time to push your promotion and initiatives. Because it can be misunderstood, right? That a destination, regardless of what is happening in your own country, you are trying to push your destination, your travel product. So I would not encourage that. But I think it's also a very important time that you reset. This is kind of, like I said, it's a great reset period, where you want to position yourself very carefully, determining which is the market that you want to reach out, which markets are going to be resilient in this COVID situation and in the post-COVID world, if that happens anytime soon. So go back to intelligence, go back to data to look at what would be that market segment that is going to be resilient. And then after that, how are you going to build your mind share? Whether you are going to digitalize it, and like what Singapore is doing right now, for example, Experience Singapore now, Travel Later. So they are trying to do virtual tours and experiences and 360 experience to find out a taste, a sample of what your destination is. And for the traveler, when they come, what is it that they can anticipate? So create that hype, create that anticipation, create and show them what you are capable of giving them when our borders are open. So that anticipation may be your focus at the moment rather than to push your promotional initiatives. And when the time is right, I think once you are able to instill that confidence in people, you will get the right market coming in. So this is the time perhaps you want to correct what mistakes we have been doing and to move into a sensible tourism development. And I think these will be the survivors of the next phase of tourism in a COVID resilient world.
Thanks, Nisha. Last word to Monica. Spain was probably in 2019, I think was probably the top country, or maybe the top two, right? 65 million or 70 million visitors.
Yeah.
So what's Spain's message now, Monica? How does Spain wants to sort of position itself for the future of the? I mean, at least for 2022.
Yeah, I mean, we want to. I wouldn't say. I mean, we still want to be leaders in tourism as we were up to 2019. We are not focused on numbers. We are focused now on the type of tourism experience and, combined also with the interest of the locals. What we want to emphasize is that we are protecting the tourists and the locals so they are safe and feel safe. We are providing, because this is really important, financial support to the tourism industry. It's almost 2 years, with no activity, so you need to be there. So there's an industry when tourism come back, hotels are open, services are open. So we are supporting financially the tourism industry. We have to identify the trends and the consumer preferences and check how the demand is evolving, anticipate the change, and doing that, collaborating really, really well. Administration and private companies all together. I think we are working together more than ever. And, just to give you what we are doing also now, just like an anecdote, given that we have Spain in the last month so many times in front of the TV and the platforms, we are using also what is called the Netflix effect. As you know, there are more than 80 million people that chooses the destination based on the series on TV. So Spain is also taking advantages, that some of the most successful series have been taped in Spain. Some like Money Heist, that is, last season coming right now. But others like The Crown or, I have been also taped in Spain. So we are taking advantage of that and, signing agreements with Netflix so we can go to the customer, to present our product. So we are working, in a series of things with the data we have to go where the customer is, so they don't have to come to to us specifically. So.
Thanks, Monica and Dr. Nisha, for sharing your thoughts. It was really a pleasure discussing this subject with both of you. I'm sure the audience has a lot of takeaways from the session. For the audience who have joined us today, I would like to really thank all of you for taking the time to join us today. We have a couple of more exciting topics after this session, so please do join them as well. Thank you very much. And assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Faisal. Thank you, Monica. It's been lovely sharing our insights here. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.